Hello guys, welcome. Today we're going to build a dashboard in Python. The general idea is to be able to select the security, let's grab Apple, and the dashboard will generate a small description about the company, some key indicators, and of course some awesome interactive graphs. You can also click on the stock price button, and this will generate the stock price distribution for the past years. So this is a great project if you're starting in data visualization. The tutorial will be divided in 3 different parts, and I hope you enjoy. Stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome to part 1. So let's start by opening VS Code. And inside VS Code we want to have a new terminal and we want to install our dependencies. So let's write pip install dash core components dash HTML components and yfinance for the Yahoo API. So let's wait some seconds, and when it's done we can create a new file. I'm calling it dashboard.py. Okay, and we can start by importing our necessary libraries. So let's import dash core components as DCC to make it shorter. Let's import dash HTML components as HTML. Let's import yfinance as yf. We also need to take from dash dot dependencies input and output. Okay, necessary to any dash application. We also need to take pandas, so let's just import pandas as PD, the classic. And let's initialize our application. So I'm calling it app, and app equals to dash dot dash to initialize a new dash application. Not comma, dot. Okay. Now we can just say run server. This will be enough to start our server. Let's just flag debug equals to true to give us some nice warnings. Now this is enough to start our application, but we also need a layout. So without a layout, we are going to be prompted to write a layout. So it's better to do it now. Let's start by creating an HTML div. And inside the HTML.div, let's write hello. Okay, before we run the server, this layout is where all the HTML content live. Okay, so all the HTML, the DCC for the dash core components, they will be inside the layout. This is what will be rendered in our application. So now that that is done, let's write Python dashboard, or just go for the start button, up to you. And let's follow this link. Okay, so now we have hello. Step 1 done. We can move to the next ones. And the next ones are basically writing our sidebar. Okay, so we want to have something saying us choose a ticker to start. We want to have a drop down box with options to choose, and we want to have 2 buttons for the stock price and the indicators. Okay, so let's tackle that. So inside our div, and this will be our main container, okay, we want to have another div for the navigation. So let's call it html.div, okay, and it will be a list because we'll have several elements inside. And let's give it a class name of navigation, or just navigation. Okay, good. Inside our container, our navigation container, we are going to have 3 different things as we saw. So the P element for like choose a ticker to start, we want to have the drop down, and we want to have 2 buttons that is going to have their own div. Okay, so let's start by the HTML P. So HTML.p or P tag, and let's write choose a ticker to start. Okay, cool. Let's give it a class name, and it's going to be called start. Okay. Now we can write our dropdown. The dropdowns are inside the dash core components, so we have to say dcc dot dropdown, and inside our dropdown, first let's give it like a name, so dropdown tickers or something like that. Dropdown ticker sounds good. And something crucial to know about dropdowns is they always have to have options. Okay, so let's start by that. So options, and let's open a list. And inside our options, so we have to have two things. We have to have like a label, something that the user will see in the front end, and we have to have a value, something that we are going to use in our backend. So we pass these values as a dictionary, so let's call it label, and the label is going to be apple, okay, the first label. And we also want to pass a value for this label, and the value will be a APL, the ticker value, okay. So we want to have more than one option, 3 in our case, so let's duplicate this line. And the second ticker, it's going to be Tesla, and the value is the ticker, right? TSLA. And the third one, it's Facebook. And Facebook ticker is just FB. Nice. So now we have our options and values. So everything is fine. We can move to the buttons. So the buttons, as I mentioned before, they will have their own div, so their own container. Okay. So let's write html.div, and inside this div, we have two buttons. So HTML button, and let's call it stock price, and give it a class name of stock button and an ID of stock. Okay, cool. So let's also duplicate this line, and the second button will be the indicators button. Let's just check here, indicators, and here change the ID to indicators. Okay, good. So we're good to go. Let's just give it a class name of buttons. Okay. Cool. So now we can check the results. So again, like my server was shut down because I'm using an extension for auto saving. So in your case, if your server is still running, just like Control S to save the file, and you can check the results. Let me open my page. Now we have three different elements. Okay, so we have our p tag, so choose a ticker to start. We have our options here, so Apple, Tesla, Facebook, and we have two buttons that are inside a div, stock price and indicators. It's not in the side yet, so this will be on the styling part. So right now we're just going to focus on create the content, okay? But it's a good start. So let's move on. So the next thing that we want to actually write, it's going to be the content part, okay? So let me open the application, and here you can see that we have two divisions. So the navigation, the div that we already wrote, and here we have another div. So basically the entire web page is divided in two big divs. So the navigation, and here is the content. Look, content, okay? So this second part is inside the content. Cool. So let's move on. And let's write then the second part that is going to be called container, okay? So we have to start by creating a new div. So this is the div for the navigation. And now we need to separate it by comma always, because again, it's a list. here, let's create a new div. And this div will be called container. So let's give it a class name of container, or content, sorry. We can call the big div, like our main div, container instead. So let's call it container. All these class names, they seem useless for now, but they will be crucial to the styling part to write the CSS. So just bear with me for now. And inside this div, our main content will live. We need several things, so let's take another look. So we need to have like some information here about the name of the company. We need to have like a logo. We need to have a description. And then we have to have this part here with KPIs and graphs. Okay. For now, let's just write actually the ticker, the logo, and we can move from there. Okay, so let's start by html.p, or let's create another div actually, and I'm going to explain it in 1 minute. So inside this div, let's create a p tag, and this p tag will have an ID of ticker. Okay. We also want to have an html.image, okay, img, and let's give it an ID of logo. So our logo will be inside this HTML image. Okay, so now that we have that, we can give it a class name of header. And we created this div to, again, to separate like the content from our header. Okay, so we have this container for the header. So let's move on, and now let's create a different div for the description. So let's call it ID description. Okay, let's give it a class name of description ticker. I'm missing a C. Here we go. And below our description, we also have the entire thing, the graph's content, and the KPIs. So let's create yet another div, and this div will have another div inside, and this div is going to have a class name, or an ID instead of a class name, my apologies, of graph contents. Okay. Now that we have that, we just need to also give an ID to this div. I will call it main content. And we are good to go. That's our HTML. We are not going to write anything else here. So that's basically it. Our HTML is ready. So let's check how does it looks. Not very good, I'm sure. We also have a small typo somewhere. Let's see what's the issue. Yeah, we need to separate it by comma here. So let's add a comma. And let's take a look in our awesome application. So it looks basically the same, right? Because we don't have any contents in our elements yet. So our HTML is not rendering yet, or yeah, they are, but it's empty. But we're going to fill it with the information from the Yahoo Finance next. Okay, so we have the header, the description, and the main content. Again, like the header, the description, and the main content here. Okay, so let's keep going, and let's move to get this data. So the first thing that we have to do is to query our Yahoo Finance API. Okay, so we can create like a callback, and To create callbacks, we have to say app.callback with a decorator before. And inside our callback, and this is a general rule for all the callbacks in Dash, we always have to have an output and an input. So it doesn't work if you are missing one of both. Okay? So let's start by actually writing our outputs. And our outputs are going to be description. And this will be the children element without S here. So let's check where is the description here, right? So we want to output something to the description. We want to output something to the logo because right now the logo is empty. So it's just an HTML image. Okay, logo here. And we are going to output it to the source. We also want to have outputs for the ticker name itself, right? So children. So here we go, the ticker. And let's output something. This is fine actually for now. We'll do it later. So let's just close here. And now that we have our outputs, we need to name our inputs. So our inputs is going to come from the drop-down list. Okay? So drop-down tickers as we have here. So we can even copy paste it from here. Drop-down tickers. Wow. And we want to take the value elements. Nice. So now that we have the callback, we have to create a function. So the callbacks are always associated with functions. So every time that you write a callback, you need to have something to output, so it will render in the dashboard, and you have to bring something in. So you have to have some input. In our case, our input will be the tickers in the drop-down list. Okay, so we select Apple, and this callback is actually actioned. Okay, so something will happen every time we choose a different ticker. And now we have to say what is going to happen when the drop-down actually is actioned. Okay, so let's say update data here. And let's take our input. So automatically the argument will be the inputs that we are giving in the callback above. So let's say update data, and let's say if v equals to none. We have to do something. Okay, this is a small workaround that we do basically in every single dashboard. That it's like when you firstly initialize the dashboard in your web browser, a value will be passed to the drop-down tickers. Okay, and this value will be none. So you don't want to do anything if the value is none. You want to have something there, something inside the drop-down, like a value. So to avoid like problems, we have to prevent an update every time that the value is none. And to do so, we actually have to import one like additional thing. So we have to go from dash dot exceptions. Let's import the prevent update. Okay. And here, when we initialize our dashboard, we reload our page. We want to raise prevent update. Okay. So let's just return something to show you what I mean. Here we have three things to output. So let's see what I mean. Another typo here is input, not inputs. Okay, let's go there. And yeah, everything is working, right? We don't have any action, but we don't have any error either. So it's a good sign. So what I mean by if we take out the prevent update, so let's see what happens if I do that, right? So when the dashboard reloads, it would actually try to like output something. So imagine that we had like our uh, values returned after you choose the ticker, right? So let's see what would happen. So before you even choose the ticker, something will be outputted, right? And you don't know what because there's no ticker yet. So that's why we have to prevent the update. So let's leave it as it is. Okay. So now that we have that, let's move to actually output the information from the Yahoo Finance API, right? So first thing is to take this data from the Yahoo Finance API. So ticker equals to yfinance.ticker. And now we have to name the ticker. So this library works that you have to pass the ticker as an argument. But we have this argument here. So the drop-down tickers, we already set the values above, right? So we have Apple, Tesla, Facebook. So we can use that. And let's actually pass the ticker here, okay? And let's just print the ticker to see what information do we have back. So let's just go back to our dashboard. In my case, the terminal is still running. And let's choose a ticker, so Apple, okay? So we have a callback error, don't worry. This is actually because of my, again, auto-saving extension that is not helping right now. Yeah, let's choose Apple. If you check, like Apple returned an object, okay, Wi-Fi object, because the ticker object contains information inside. So instead of just printing ticker, let's take ticker.info. This will give us more information for sure. Let's go back to our dashboard. So let's go here and see what happens after we choose a ticker. So we have a bunch of information about like Apple, right? We're not interested in so much information. We just want the description, the logo, and the children, the ticker, right? The company name. So let's start by selecting just the data that we want. So let's call it inf equals to ticker.info, just to have it in a different variable. And let's add this to a data frame. Okay, so df equals to pd.dataframe. And since this is a dictionary, we want to import the dictionary to the data frame. So we do that with from dict. And we can pass our dictionary, and we have to pass the argument orient equals to index. Okay, and I want to invert the order. So I want to have the columns as the keys of the dictionary and the values as the one row only. Okay. I can even print to show you what I mean by that. And let's again choose some ticker in our dashboard. And here we go. So now we have a nice data frame with the columns here and the values above. Okay, so a normal data frame. Now the next thing is to choose some columns because we have too much information. We want to take the logo URL. We want to take the short name, and we want to take the long business summary. This is definitely long. You can choose your own variables and you can customize this dashboard whatever like you want, of course. I choose this as an example, but feel free to play with it and actually make it better. So let's see what do we have in return. So we want to return here the long business summary, and we want just like the initial value, so value is 0. We want to take, and let me copy that, otherwise it will be boring. We want to take the logo URL here, and we want to take the short name. Okay, so let's copy it again and take the short name. Okay, now let's see how does it looks like. Let's run again, or in your case, let's go just to the dashboard, and let's choose something. So now we have something returned, right? We have this nice apple with the name of the company. We have the logo, and we have the description. So everything that we ever dreamed is here. Okay. So good job so far. We're in the next part. We are going to create the rest of the content, and in the third part, we are going to style the dashboard. So stay tuned and thank you.